Hey, and welcome to the Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt, that fine gentleman over there, the one, the only, still the incomparable Dan Rubenstein in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois. Sir, how was your Centaur Saturday?
It was great. It was great mostly because everything was happy in my universe, right? With the team I like, with the teams my family likes. Michigan, Washington. Well, I have a brother who went to Purdue. That was, I suppose, less fun. I doubt he watched it. He's not a college football dude. But all the same, had a great Centaur Saturday. I'm sure people seem to respond to the nickname in a largely positive way. Not the sound as much.
Not the sound. No,
not the sound as much.
No.
But I am just, look, we have a lot to digest, a lot to process, a lot coming through our content intestines. Settle, I know.
Settle.
But I'm ready to talk.
Your Verballer Top 10 poll, by the way, which we're now doing for the second straight week. You can vote at verballers.com if you are ever so inclined. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Michigan, unchanged 1 through 4. Oklahoma, by virtue of its big victory on the road at Nebraska, jumps up to 5. USC jumps up to 6. Clemson falls 2 spots to number 7, followed by Oklahoma State, Kentucky, and Arkansas. We're going to talk through what transpired for all of these teams here in the course of the next 45 to 60 minutes or so as we go through all things college football week 3. Don't forget this episode, all of our episodes driven by our good friends over at Geico. You may have seen me tweet out, I went to a sports bar for this game. For the Penn State game, excuse me. And I don't know if you have the same sense of anxiety when you get to a sports bar, but immediately I start looking what's on what TV.
Sure.
What is the TV situation here, and do I need to put my foot down? Thankfully, I got there a little bit in advance of the Penn State game, and you would probably not be surprised to hear that there wasn't a big crowd for the noon slate of college football action at this particular establishment.
Yeah.
And I was assertive.
It was
I got
a
the job
medium
done.
noon Saturday.
That's right. I got the job done. I started directing traffic a little bit. We need ABC, CBS, ESPN on these TVs. Had a nice little three-way system going on the main TVs in this sports bar. By the time
assertive with his 3-ways. Okay.
Well, I mean, what can we say here on the show? But
yeah, we're 10.
Got everything in good working order and time to watch these games. I think a really fun week 3 that we're going to go through. Maybe not quite the variance in results that we saw in week 2. And by that, I mean upsets, but still a whole lot of awesome college football to discuss. Why don't we start off, Dan, where we always start off? Let's hear from the pulse of the Verballerhood. Let's hear your week 3 reverbs.
This is Luke in Syracuse. Just got out of the JMA Wireless Dome where teams go to die. I'm drunk, this game was drunk, and everybody else is drunk. Go Cuse.
Hey guys, this is Sean from Arkansas.
Hey, this is Heather from Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Hey, this is Alec from Portland.
Dan, Ty, this is Tyler calling from the heart of central Pennsylvania. Sean Clifford really does have a pretty diversified portfolio of assets for a 24-year-old. He owns his own business. He owns real estate in about 75% of his own fan base's heads. And as of about 45 minutes ago, he owns the Auburn Tigers. Let's go, baby. We are.
Dan, Ty, I don't even like Penn State. But guess who just got murdered?
I won tickets to this Saturday's Nebraska-Oklahoma game, and all I can say is I'm glad I didn't pay for anything that was on that field.
As a Georgia Tech fan, I envy Nebraska because they already fired their coach. Wish we could get there. Go Jackets.
Northwestern, what are you doing? Just calling in to say one of the weirder things that's come out of my mouth all year, but Oregon legend Bo Nix accounting for 5 total touchdowns. Let's go!
This is what college football is all about. Thank you, BYU. Come back anytime. We had a blast. Please, come back. Austin welcomes you with open arms. We had a great time. Hope you did too. Cheers. Go Ducks.
I am on my way to Bristol, Connecticut right now because I have to break into ESPN and destroy the master tape of the Wake Forest Liberty game so no one can ever see it again.
Good teams win, great teams cover, and if you're an Arkansas fan, you're just lucky that you won your clunker.
Does UCLA have a UCLA problem? The answer is yes, amongst many, many other things. Oh boy, go Blue.
I know it's difficult to watch Pac-12 games most weeks, but if you get the chance to watch the Washington Huskies, you should. Michael Penix is for real.
Is it time to start talking to your kids about an undefeated Florida State? Things are starting to feel a little bit like 2013 again.
I think I'm going to need some help here. I don't know how to tell my kids about a 3-0 Kansas.
Raise your hand if you saw 3-0 and Big 12 leader Kansas coming. Put your hand down, you damn liar.
Kansas is 3-0. Rock chalk, baby. See y'all in October and December. Hell yeah.
My message to the powers that be, it's time to rank Kansas, you cowards. 3-0. Rock chalk, baby.
My Texas A&M Aggies have somehow squeezed out a win against Miami, which should make me happy. But that defense, I don't know, it's questionable. And that offense, my God, it just makes me question all of my incredibly poor life decisions to this point.
Hey, Aggies. I have good news and I have bad news. Good news is you got the W. Bad news is I don't think it was a Haynes King problem. I think you have an $8.5 billion Jimbo problem. Yikes.
Oh, what a great batch of reverbs.
Tough.
Shout out to our guy Shay for throwing those together deep into the night. We had just great diversity in phone call, in message.
Usually I heard an Australian accent in there. Usually we import Australian college football via punters, correct?
Correct. Facts only, yes.
One of the scariest ideas is Texas A&M football as an export to another country, like the Simpsons episode where the frogs infected the great country of Australia. That was, oh man, I apologize if we're infecting Australia or anywhere else with Texas A&M football. That's a tough beat in a winning effort.
It's like when you go on an official state visit and take something very meaningful from your country along with you to present to a foreign dignitary.
Yeah.
I don't know if A&M would rise to that level.
We brought chocodiles. Yeah. What? Of all the things? Texas A&M football? Yeah. Okay. Where are we beginning? I guess let's start with your, big picture takeaways from the day and any games you want to use to shove that content through the, I said content intestines? Contestin? No, not great. Not great. All right, where are we starting?
Well, I mean, I think we can use the Texas A&M Miami game as sort of a way to describe the weekend, in a sense. I mean, we had a pretty good idea what Texas A&M was going into this game. To some extent, I believe the same is true with Miami. My takeaway, going back and looking through everything in week 3, was essentially that we had a pretty good read for where things stood in week 3.
Yes.
Just in thinking back to how we previewed the action. I mean, I did pretty well on my picks. If I'm
you did
being
better than I
honest
did.
here.
I'm pretty sure I took Auburn. That was rough. Continue.
I mean, not everybody is as good at picking games as yours truly, but we're all friends. We can still be friends here.
True.
I at least felt like I had a good sense for where teams were at. And the A&M game is almost a perfect representation of that. Because what was the vibe around A&M coming into this one? Are they going to make a change at quarterback? Is Haynes King the guy?
Right.
Max Johnson, come on down. You're the next contestant on whatever the hell kind of offense Jimbo Fisher's running these days.
Yeah.
And Big Max did all right. 10 of 20, 140 yards, had a touchdown, but just 264 yards for Texas A&M's offense. No turnovers. We could make a case. I will make a case that A&M's a bit of a rich man's Iowa. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But as our last caller on the Reverbs mentioned, it may not be a Haynes King problem.
Right.
Texas A&M may be who we thought they were going into week 3. as is the case for a number of teams around college football.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Maybe it was more of a sit on my shoulders Saturday because there were a lot of individual performances carrying teams to kind of struggle-ish wins at times. And in this case, it was probably Devin A-Chain, right, from the Texas A&M offense. And A&M down key players on both sides of the ball via suspension, via injury, via targeting ejection, via all sorts of things. Miami down key players, especially when you look at what they were not able to do in the passing game. Xavier Restrepo has been a very big part of that. It was not a particularly pretty offensive showcase for the sport.
No.
So, yeah, Miami had issues with drops. There were plays to be made downfield, and this receiving core, especially without Restrepo, looks kind of pedestrian. I thought Will Mallory looked pretty good, the tight end. I thought the offensive line, for as much criticism as has been lobbed at their direction. That's English. I thought they were fine. I don't think Tyler Van Dyke hit the floor at all in the way of a sack or anything like that. But yeah, and I don't know if this is a Mario thing. There's no referendum after 3 games. This is not his roster. I understand all of that. Same issues at times on offense plagued Oregon under Mario Cristobal, be it the drops, be it the conservative play calling at times, be it the not going downfield all the time, be it weird punt, go for it decisions. It's game 3. I think Mario is going to win a lot of games in Miami. I thought the defense was really good, and this was the thing for Miami that I expected, especially in the red zone, given Kevin Steele's reputation as a red zone defensive play caller. They tightened up really, really well. They gave up some yards, but they made plays in the red zone. This defense gave themselves a chance to win more often than not, and came away impressed with both of these defenses, especially with Texas A&M shorthanded as they were in the secondary over the course of this game. So a lot to be cleaned up for both of these offenses. Max Johnson, I messaged you during the game, like, Max Johnson doesn't quite have a feel for the pass rush. Could be a wonderful fantasy thing opportunity over the course of this season. He throws the ball like a second and a half too late generally. And so that is going to be an ongoing issue, along with everything else that's going to be an ongoing issue for Texas A&M's offense, especially a shorthanded version of it. But win your clunkers. Win your clunkers at home, at night, at Kyle Field, against a ranked team. A win is a win is a win. Texas A&M gets in the correct column after not necessarily appearing so last week.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Jimbo acknowledged after the game that the offense still needs to get better.
Yeah.
Right? Newsflash, it's getting late kind of early in that A&M schedule because over the next 3 weeks, they've got Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Alabama. I'm not sure the version of A&M that we've seen thus far is good enough to beat any of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, say what you will. Zach Calzada beat Alabama. So any given Saturday with any given A&M roster, same roster that basically did nothing against Arkansas last year, which is that this coming week? The Arkansas game?
This coming week, yes.
Always fun on that neutral field, but yeah, they're going to need to dot some I's and lowercase J's.
17-9 was your final score. A&M gets the W at home. Speaking of Zach Calzada and speaking of SEC football, let's stay in the SEC and talk about Penn State 12. No, excuse me. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about Penn State 41, Auburn 12, Daniel.
Yeah, let's do that.
Another game that went exactly as yours truly described.
That's true.
Manny Diaz.
By the way, 5-0. Your Ties picks in Tie versus the World on our Spotify show Thursday evening, solidverbal.com/Spotify. Continue.
Manny Diaz was always going to load the box up in this game. He's always going to load the box up with 8 or 9 guys and force Auburn to beat them with the pass. Manny Diaz loaded up the box. He forced Auburn to beat him with the pass. He did exactly what we described, what we talked about the preview. Lo and behold, 4 turnovers in this game for Auburn. Penn State, I thought, looked really good on the road. Really good on the road, especially on defense, which, you know, we can discuss in a little bit more detail if we like. Aside from the defense, which has been very adaptable through 3 games, I think that's been one of the kind of the unspoken highlights of this team thus far. The Penn State ground game, led by freshman Nick Singleton, of course, living the single life.
Oh, yeah. Keep it going.
Along with Katron Allen, that was the story in this game. It's going to continue being the story all year. 245 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground for Penn State in totality, but those two freshmen combined for 176 and 4 touchdowns. Singleton especially has big play potential. You saw it two separate instances where, he just beats guys to the edge. He is a special runner if they can find ways to use him. They're also starting to incorporate Brenton Strange, their big tight end, a little bit more into the action. So I'm really excited about what we saw from this Penn State team, both on offense and defense. The condition here, obviously, is that it's Auburn. And Auburn's a bit of a tire fire at the moment, especially at quarterback, especially if they can't run the football. It doesn't matter how good we think their defensive front could be. The issue is that if they can't score points, if they're putting so much strain on their own defense, this is what's going to happen against better teams. Penn State took advantage of that. Again, a big win here on the road in Auburn.
Yeah, I don't know how good Auburn's defensive front can be, but I know they can be pushed around by Penn State. So right now they're not great because not a lot of teams on the Power 5 level get pushed around by Penn State's offensive line. Credit to Penn State. It was working. They kept going with it. You mentioned Nick Singleton in the booth and the burst that he plays with. What'd you say was Katron
Allen.
Katron Allen. Yeah,
he's the other freshman.
Yeah, he's the other freshman. It's sort of a thunder and lightning for the future situation, perhaps. I don't know. Sean Clifford, sharp. Absolutely sharp to Brenton Strange. I don't know who else he hit, but as I was watching this game along with other games, Sean Clifford has a good amount of command on the road in a tough place to play. Now, Auburn doesn't have the corners that they had last year, and that helps. But Penn State had a very sound game plan, and I don't know what we can expect from this Auburn team. I was optimistic that situationally they might be able to make this game interesting. But no, TJ Finley, obviously not the answer. Robbie Ashford had a nice touchdown throw late, I want to say, kind of a swing dart, just timed out well, but not probably the long-term answer here. Brian Harsin, probably not the long-term answer here. So, again, if everything is stacked in favor of Penn State and they win this game by 29 points, that's a very good sign for the outlook of the Nittany Lions season.
Yeah, I mean, it seems in light of this game almost a near certainty that Penn State is 5-0 when they go to Michigan in mid-October. I mean,
the Michigan State and Minnesota games are going to go probably the furthest in determining what Penn State's final schedule is going to look like. Final record, yeah.
One final point on Auburn. I mean, we can all kind of see the writing on the wall. We know where this is headed. They were ready to fire him after a okay season last year.
Yeah.
But I just kept thinking to myself, okay, they're getting pushed around by Penn State at home. What happens when they go on the road to Georgia? What happens when they go on the road to Ole Miss? Ole Miss is looking really sharp. What happens if they go on the road when they go on the road late in the year, last game against Alabama? There are big games on this schedule, even Mississippi State, beginning part of November. You're taking this team on the road and expecting to get any kind of better result? Something's got to change. And if they don't have the answer at quarterback, it just makes it so hard. Maybe we see Zach Calzada before long. I don't know. Maybe they dust him off and put him in there. I don't know what his health
is like. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, they were a top 15, I want to say, team heading into November last year. Something like 6-2, 6-2, 7-2, something like that. And they've lost however many straight against Power 5 teams. So
not good.
Yeah, tough sled.
Speaking of Auburn, let's talk about an Auburn transplant. Bo Nix. Good Bo Nix. Good Bo Nix. We had 227 through the air. We had 212 on the ground, all told, for the Oregon Ducks. Apparently, they're running the spread HD. They're bringing it back out of retirement. 200. Bo Nix accounts for 5 touchdowns. Really good showing for him. Certainly after that week 1 game against Georgia, left a lot to be desired. Looked good in week 2. Week 3 was sort of that intermediate spot, that gray area between playing the really good team and the really bad team. What can Bo Nix do in this offense? I know you messaged me during this one saying that you thought Oregon, you thought Dan Lanning in particular, acquitted himself quite well with the way that they went about this against a good team in BYU. Beating BYU 41-20 is definitely something that you're going to look back on later in the year and say, that was a pretty good win. Even though it was at home and BYU's got its own issues, but BYU's a good team. They're going to win a bunch of games, and Oregon had control of this one pretty much the full way through.
Yes, they did have the control of this game the full way through. Bo Nix looked confident, and I know you're not like the biggest Brock Heward guy in the whole wide world, but when Bo Nix needed to throw the ball away and not force a play, it's BYU. It's September. It's very early. There will be bigger moments this season. He threw it away and lived to play and march this team down the field another down. And so there were little moments like that where like, okay, this is definitely a good Bo Nix Saturday. He went downfield some, not a lot, but highlighted by a big play that set up a touchdown, a 50-some-odd yard bomb to Troy Franklin, who's probably their best receiver. They ran confidently. The offensive line played well. And the big thing to me was defensively, they seem to have their act together. They're not a great pass rushing team at the moment. I really like Brandon Dorlus. He's an all Pac-12 caliber defensive lineman. But what they did is they just owned the line of scrimmage for the most part. They kept everything in front of them in the passing game for Jaron Hall. And I mean, they were down a couple of key receivers and they were just making tackles on the edge. And so if anybody watched any bit of that Georgia game, you know that was a large issue and point of concern. Oregon got the job done. They made plays in space. They got off the field, and I think they scored touchdowns, or they scored at least on, I think, their first 6 drives or something like that. So they made a statement that they were well prepared for this game, and it was like we got the reverb about Sean Clifford, I think it was. Like, it was a highly diversified, successful day for especially Oregon's offense. They're giving the ball to a number of running backs. They were largely making very positive plays and keeping the sticks moving, and the game was basically never in doubt. So I doubted Oregon. I think a lot of that. I saw the game day picks. Maybe everybody but Herb Street doubted Oregon and took BYU, but it was a nice statement heading into, I think the Ducks have Wazoo this coming week on the road, that they can play confidently and successfully against a pretty decent team.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the schedule, because I was looking this through a little bit as we were going through things this morning. Outside of the Wazoo game this coming week, which I'm not sure Wazoo's all that good. I like Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward. I'm not sure about Wazoo.
I think they have a good defense. I think they have like a pretty interesting defense.
I'm not worried about that matchup the way I think I might have been preseason. But I'm seeing Stanford, Arizona, UCLA, which almost lost to South Alabama. Probably should have lost to South Alabama.
Arizona currently has a transitive FCS national championship.
Correct.
Sir. Yeah.
But Cal, Colorado, we joke about not knowing who teams are until December. Oregon might fit into that category given the fact that their last 3 games are Washington, Utah, and then the road game, the Platypus Cup, if you will.
The Platy. Win the Platy.
Against Oregon State. But all told, this is a pretty good schedule for Oregon to continue getting its act together, continue trying to fine-tune its pass rush, get Bo Nix in good working order in time for that slate in November, which it will be tough, but I like what I saw.
Excuse me.
Against BYU.
Bovember?
Bovember? We could go Bovember.
I'm not steering into that until I see evidence that he deserves it. Continue.
Big win for Oregon again, 41-20 at home against BYU. By the way, BYU's first loss of the year.
Yeah.
And we'll see what the future holds in store for them. It's still a nice schedule in front of BYU. They've got the neutral siter in Vegas in a couple weeks against Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. They're still going to play that after Notre Dame's offense yesterday? That's still a thing? Does the city of Las Vegas not have that like termination option? No? Okay.
Let's stay in the Pac-12. Let's talk about Washington 39, Michigan State 28. I was workshopping a little pun here.
Oh, no. The floor is yours.
Has anybody ever tried the Penix Mightier with DeBoer?
Oh, with DeBoer. Then with DeBoer. Yeah, I mean, that actually does make sense. It's not the easiest thing to say out loud with a human mouth.
It's odd construction, right? It's odd.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's still it's more family friendly than Robert Griffin III saying Big Penix energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going the other direction, and my mind went to cold cuts as it often does. And because Michael Penix is that trigger man, is that the head of this offense, the boar's head. But that's a deep cut for those of us who appreciate cold cuts. Like
the Penix Mightier with DeBoer.
Yeah. Let's
the
just talk
Indiana
about the
transfer, Michael Penix Jr. reunited with new head coach at Washington, Kalen DeBoer, who was his offensive coordinator when they were both at Indiana. 397, 4 touchdowns, baby. Throwing lasers out there.
That was the exact word I was going to use. Lasers. Continue.
Laser beams. He looked really sharp against Michigan State. He played them 2 previous times, as we mentioned on our preview episode, both of which were under obviously different circumstances when he was still back in the Big Ten. But Michael Penix, again, takes it to Michigan State. Michigan State, I think, has a better defense than last year, but obviously still a ways to go, and Michael Penix was able to push up against those pressure points. Shout out to our guy Shane, by the way, in the Verballer Discord, who pretty much predicted the exact flow of this game last Monday.
Yeah.
Last Monday, like to a T, said this is exactly what's going to go down. So a nice win for Washington. A pass-happy game. Pass-happy game. 82 total passing attempts here, at least partially due to the fact that Sparty fell down 22-0 in like the first quarter. I mean, it was a kind of a runaway train early for Washington, and never really in doubt for the Huskies, like the exact kind of game that you want. If there's a big primetime game against a team that you know can play, you always want your team to jump out early and be able to coast the way the Huskies did here. Nice win for Kalen DeBoer.
He was an absolute stud, Michael Penix. And the laser term is correct. It reminded me his ball. I think I mentioned this before when he was having better games at Indiana, that he sort of has a Tecmo Super Bowl arm where it's just like, there's not a lot of loft, but it gets to the exact right place. And he was confident. He was stepping in. The offensive line protected him. The receivers obviously were very good. It was Jalen Polk, I believe, Jalen McMillan. They ran the ball well. The story to me was actually it's Michael Penix and the defense. He made the plays, but Washington's defense was the one that really stepped up. This Michigan State team, obviously behind a running back who's no longer there, and Kenneth Walker, completely silenced on the ground. Absolutely silenced by this Washington defense, which was a question that the Washington front has taken a step back from where they were under the heyday of Chris Peterson and Jimmy Lake running the defense and Pete Kwiatkowski. And so they stepped up and they came to play. There's also the possibility that Michigan State's an average team, right? That
Very
like we
much
don't fully know the context of this win, like we don't know the context of any win in week 3. But even if Michigan State is average, Washington wasn't winning a lot of games against average teams these last couple of years. So you should be absolutely encouraged and excited, and more excited than you were last week for Washington football if you're a Husky fan, or if you just like fun college football teams. The score was, it indicates a game that was closer than it actually was. I think it was a very nice day, by and large, for the Pac-12. Don't pay attention to UCLA and Arizona State and Colorado. But by and large, Washington on that stage on network TV, because I think this was an ABC game, or it was a regional ABC game, whatever it was. Great showing. Great showing for the Huskies. And when you look at their schedule now, if they are, capital P, pretty good.
It's an interesting story, isn't it?
It's anything less than 8's kind of disappointing if Michael Penix is healthy. And I understand the Michael Penix experience is sort of, what's the old joke about weather in Florida? Do you like the weather? Wait 5 minutes. You don't like the weather? Wait 5 minutes. You don't like where Michael Penix is at? Wait 5 minutes. You love where he's at? Wait 5 minutes. He strung together 60 minutes of very good football yesterday.
Yeah, he looked good. The schedule for Washington doesn't get tougher until November.
Right.
And even then, it's not terrible.
No. They're at Autzen,
it's really
though, right?
not.
They're at
Autzen, which would be a tough game for them. But as we've been saying, Washington remained an unknown, if only because of the coaching change. But the roster still has a lot of talent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And Kalen DeBoer went out, got some guys, most notably Penix Jr., and to bring him in, assimilate him into the system so quickly through 3 weeks, to look as good as they did, even against Michigan State, even if Michigan State is average, like you said, it's not like Washington was winning these games in recent memory. So good for them. A really nice win here. 3-0 start for the Kalen DeBoer era. The DeBoer era?
DeBoer. I don't know. It's not great, but also Washington doesn't have, they don't have USC and Utah on the schedule.
No, it's a good schedule.
Pretty good.
Let's go to the old rivalry, Oklahoma, Nebraska.
Yeah, not much meat on the rivalry bones in this one.
No, the way this one started out, I thought maybe we were in for a barn burner because Nebraska comes out firing on all cylinders. They score the first touchdown. As it were, Nebraska scored the first time in this game and the last time in this game. In between, they got shut out 49-0, and Gus Johnson got sick.
Yeah.
I'm assuming not from this game, but we can't rule it out.
That's not nice. That's not nice. It's college football. It's still fun for everybody but Nebraska fans.
580 yards for Oklahoma, 312, 4 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know how much to read into this on the Oklahoma side. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how much to read into it because Nebraska's defense has been predictably terrible all year. They've been really bad. Now they fired their coach. Mickey Joseph's taking responsibility for not having the team prepared. There's only so much he can do given the circumstance. He's not Superman. Nebraska's defense leaves so much to be desired that it almost makes it difficult for me to figure out how good this Oklahoma offense really is. That said, they look really freaking good. Once they got going, they look really good. And no one's going to talk about the defense for Oklahoma, but this is still a pretty good Nebraska offense that's proven they can score points and move the ball. And the way they held Nebraska down until, the last score of the game, again, pretty good. Pretty good. I understand why our Verballers would move Oklahoma up into their top 5.
Totally. There is that element, though, of Nebraska football in 2022. That's a bit like a too good AI photo filter. Like, Nebraska football made Northwestern look stunning. Nebraska football made Georgia Southern look flawless. And so now I think it's important to say the manner in which Oklahoma did this, right? It wasn't a crock-potting in which they just sort of scored 7 to 10 points a quarter and won this game 31-3 and slowly marched. Oklahoma's defense looked angry, played with a purpose, worked in a number of different players, veterans, younger dudes. They were able to silence Nebraska's offense, which has scored points and does have playmakers in a number of different ways. And their own offense was able to succeed very directly going at Nebraska, right? It was Dylan Gabriel early on with that longer run, sort of tiptoeing down the sideline. It was the running game went all game long. The offensive line, which we had talked about in the preseason as being a bit of a question. Again, the Nebraska photo filter can reveal or can cover up for things that are not super sightly. But yeah, receivers made plays. They had a trick play in there with I think it was Braden Willis throwing a touchdown pass. The manner in which Oklahoma made a statement in this game against a team you should make a statement against on the road if you are that top 10, 12, 15-ish type program in year one of a new coach. That manner was very successful and impressive. What does it mean moving forward in a Big 12 that doesn't look as great? I don't know. But I think it's all gravy right now for Brent Venables in year one.
Yeah, by the way, the point spread in this one closed at Nebraska plus 10.5. There was a lot of late steam on Nebraska, people betting, maybe hoping that this would be closer than it was. And I get it. I think we both went Nebraska, didn't we? Plus the points. But, in the end, Oklahoma, far too refined at this point in the season.
Ooh, good use.
Thank you. Go to Lincoln, Nebraska. Given the circumstances there, it's not great. Any great surprise that they would win 49-14. So nice win for the Sooners on the road. Do you want to stay in the Big 12 and knock this out quick?
Sure.
Let's talk about all things Big 12. We had Texas winning by 21 over UTSA. Kansas, baby. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Buddy.
Getting a 3-0 with a nice win over Houston, 48-30. Tulane. Let's come back to the Tulane game. I want to get your take on this because you've been high on K-State.
Yeah.
Baylor wins big. West Virginia wins big. Iowa State by 33. A triple-decker, by the way. 3 touchdowns for Hunter Deckers, 43-10 over Ohio. And Oklahoma State, 63-7 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. The game that I just mentioned, Tulane 17, K-State 10. You called this one out in the preview as the game that you were interested in.
Yeah.
K-State was blanked in the second half. They scored 10 points in the second quarter, nothing the rest of the way. Is this a circumstance that K-State is far worse than you thought? Is this a case that K-State is on the road at Oklahoma in its next game? Is this an Adrian Martinez thing? What is this? What's wrong here?
It's all offense. It's all passing game. It's all Adrian Martinez is not a bad quarterback. I think he's a bad fit for what Kansas State wants to do. You could see Adrian Martinez just sort of in his own head about not turning the ball over. And there was a lot of hesitation about, like, he didn't turn the ball over, but like there's hesitation to this offense, and it's just a bad fit, and there's no good option behind him, it seems. I think it's Will Howard still, right, who's occupying that backup role for Kansas State. And when Tulane can say, like, all right, anybody but Deuce Vaughn can beat us, and they can't, and they score 10 points, and I jumped off. I was willing to believe and buy in the preseason that, like, look, maybe it's just, and I thought, like, maybe a more conservative Adrian Martinez was like an actually interesting answer, that he'll be better at picking his spots and won't feel the need to do everything himself. But the balance is just way off on this offense. Yeah. And this team has a defense good enough to win a number of games. They're scary off the edge. I think they have playmakers on all three levels, but you can't do it with that alone in 2022. And so, yeah, I jumped off the Kansas State bandwagon. We did the episode after week 1 when they struggled to move the ball down the field through the air against North Dakota, I believe, is who they were playing that week. And it's early in the season, and we can fix things. I believe it's Colin Klein, by the way, if you want to feel old, who's calling the plays for the Kansas State offense.
Correct. That's correct.
There's time to fix things. There's time to adjust and tweak and overhaul. Harder in season than out of season. And that's sometimes going to be the cautionary tale about quarterbacks in the transfer portal, is suddenly everybody's scrambling for a chair, and maybe the chair you find is not the best fit for what you're trying to do. Maybe you're a slimmer person, maybe you're a wider person, maybe you require more support, maybe you require less support, and the chair is not as accommodating to your needs. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you Adrian Martinez is a bad quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Kansas State's a bad place to play quarterback. It might just be a bad fit.
South Dakota, by the way, in week 1.
South Dakota, excuse me. All due respect to all of the Dakotas.
Yeah, and Tulane this week, per projections going into this game, K-State, per the advanced numbers we look at, should have been like a 17-point favorite.
Yeah, as sexy as this helmet matchup was how unsexy the actual proceedings in the second half were.
Next 3 weeks, by the way, at Oklahoma, Texas Tech, at Iowa State.
I also, flip side, great win for Tulane.
Yeah.
Right? You see Willie Fritz was crowd surfing in the locker room afterwards. That's great. That's been an up and down time for him in New Orleans. Great for Tulane. Great for the Green Wave. Great for Willie Fritz. Awesome.
Texas, by the way, trailed 17-7 in the second quarter. They were tied 17-17 at half against UTSA. We were interested in this matchup, not so much because we thought there was any real threat of Texas losing to UTSA, but UTSA is a good team. Texas dealing with some injury issues now with Quinn Ewers on the shelf for a little bit of time. And of course, on the heels of that game against Alabama, it suddenly feels like Texas. I'm not going to say Texas is back, and don't put words in my mouth, but Texas might exceed some of our expectations. And despite the fact that the first half was a little rough, they came out in the second half. They got a long touchdown from Bijan Robinson. They got a pick 6 in the third quarter. Collectively, these things give them momentum. Ultimately, they get the win. Bijan Robinson's just a dude.
Yeah,
an absolute dude in this game. 183 yards, 3 touchdowns. Hudson Card was the starter. He was able to play. He was fine. He's not Quinn Ewers, in my opinion. He's not Quinn Ewers. They're not going to see the full lift of this offense until Quinn Ewers is healthy and back running things. But all told, after that Alabama game, maybe a bit of a sluggish start, perhaps a little bit of a letdown spot early, but we're able to get it together late and win going away, 41-20.
Fair enough. Roshan Johnson making plays in key moments, and sometimes it's not what you do, but it's what you do when you react, when you have to change, and like, oh, you caught me. I'm a 5-year-old and I made this mistake. Like, now the 5-year-old's going to be better behaved. The Texas defense gave up a bunch in the first half, made changes at halftime. The front was a lot more stout. They were able to possess the ball a little bit more and keep the defense resting on the sideline. All of these things make a difference, and all of these things are indicators. UTSA is a good team. It's a good program. It's much more difficult against some other teams with more talented rosters, but Texas wasn't necessarily making these improvements in games all year last year. So a very nice win, all things considered, with a hobbled Hudson Card, no less. Jordan Whittington stepping up as another option out wide next to Xavier Worthy. Good win for Texas. Didn't see much of it because it was on the Longhorn Network. Yeah.
All right. Let's break into the New York market with the Big Ten, and let's talk about our live show in New York next month. Very quickly. SolidVerbalLive.com or SmellTiesHair.com. If you're a weirdo and that's your sort of thing, okay?
Right.
I'll just say it. That's how you can get tickets. We have decided on the concept. The working title is College Football, the Game Show.
The Solid Verbal presents, College Football, the Game Show, an interactive fan experience.
So many subtitles.
5
It's like the High School Musical thing they did on the Disney Plus network.
Yes.
Where they just kept adding subtitles to the end.
Yeah.
It is going to be you versus me.
Yes.
We are working on special guests, which could definitely spice this thing up a little bit. But it's the only college football game show that I am aware of. It's going to be a ton of fun. We've got mini games. We've got everything college football themed planned for the evening. It's going to be a fun time out at Chelsea Music Hall, October the 7th. It's a Friday night. Again, we are trying a concept here that could be spectacularly bad or could be freaking awesome. I tend to land on the side of freaking awesome.
No, it's
because
gonna be
I
a
know what we've
beautiful
got
thing.
planned, and this is going to be fun as hell.
No,
Also,
yeah.
You are like Mr. Game Show. You love game shows.
I love game shows.
It's what you really want to do in this world. Game shows.
I will leave this all behind. The Solid Verbal, my family, you name it.
Yep.
To host a game show. Yeah. Full time. The College Football, the Game Show, centered around the 2022 season, by the way. Test your knowledge, play along, all sorts of fun surprises. I'm very excited. College Football, the Game Show, live in New York, October 7th. solidverballive.com or smelltieshair.com. Yeah, that's all.
If you're a weirdo. Okay. Speaking of that Big Ten New York market, Rutgers, baby. Woo!
Keep on chugging.
16-14. Man. What a game. I'm not going to say much more
Kurt
about
Warner's
that.
son started for Temple.
E.J. Warner, yes, getting this. This game was brought to you by Antonin Dvorak. It was really bad.
It was bad. But they won. Rutgers won. And they keep winning. So
16-14.
whatever.
Michigan blanks UConn 59-0. Ohio State hangs 77 on Toledo. We had Wisconsin winning big. We had Minnesota winning big. Oh my! Did you see the quote from Carl Durrell?
I did. I thought
After
it was
this
made
game?
up, and it is sadly not.
Quote, I feel good about our attitude about playing the game. We're just not very good at really playing it efficiently and proficiently, end quote. Carl Durrell sums it all up.
It's directly to the point.
We had Maryland winning by 7 over SMU. We had Indiana winning 33-30 over Western Kentucky in overtime. Southern Illinois knocks off your Northwestern Wildcats 31-24, despite a nice effort from Evan Hull on the ground. 4 turnovers for the Cats. Did not.
He
make
might
that
be
easy.
a sort of in a losing effort type this year because he's really good. He is really fun and he's all purpose and he's a weapon all over the field. But yeah, it could be that situation.
Tough sledding. And last but certainly not least, I already mentioned the Penn State game. Iowa 27, Nevada 0. This game started at 6:40 local time. Did not finish up until 1:39 in the morning. A 7-hour Iowa experience for the loyal zealots among us who appreciate the minutia of Hawkeyes football. 3 separate weather delays that lasted a combined 3 hours and 56 minutes. So a long time to wait for a bad beat.
Yeah.
If you were among the folks out there who said Iowa can't score 23.5 points.
A long
time to
wait
wait for that.
They made plays downfield. They looked a little more creative on offense, but Nevada's going to be very bad all year long. So again, it's the manner in which it happens, and Iowa displayed an acceptable manner. That look, if Iowa were a top 15-ish team and a more complete team, this game would have been 59-3. But there were lightning delays. If you want to attribute the up and down nature of this game, whatever. Win games. Win. Not everybody does. Talk to Arizona State fans this morning through the tears.
Through the tears, yeah. We'll get to Arizona State in a little bit here. What else jumped out to you in Big Ten land? I wanted to give a shout out to Roman Hemby. Yeah, running back for Maryland, who looks really, really good in the Terrapin backfield. This is not a great game otherwise.
It was very sloppy. It was very
sloppy. Yeah, 5 turnovers, 15 penalties alone for Maryland, but they do get the job done against, I think, a pretty good SMU team.
There are going to be, I would set the over-under at 2.5 for Maryland games in which their fan base will say, ultimately, that was a very winnable game that the Terps lost. Ultimately.
Yeah.
Probably with more spicy language. Maryland needs to get its act together. But again, win your clunkers. And Talia looked good. They were able to run the ball, as you mentioned. And SMU, I think, is going to be an interesting team. It was Rashee Rice out wide for the Stangs. But yeah, Maryland with a good amount of firepower needs to, again, dot some I's, cross some T's, and lowercase j's, and what have you. Need to get their act together real quick because the offerings of free yards, it's very kind and generous, but it will not get the job done, obviously, against some better teams on their schedule.
No. I mean, look, the story around the Big Ten for some of the more prominent teams that we've been discussing as potential contenders or at least flies in the ointment, we're not going to sit here and read stats. I mean, C.J. Stroud, J.J. McCarthy, a lot of folks winning. Mo Ibrahim had a big day on the ground for Minnesota, over 200 yards, had 3 touchdowns. Don't want to do the stat reading, but I think before long, we're going to see some interesting matchups here in the Big Ten. And we could talk a little bit about what it looks like in week 4, but we start to see some of those pairings that will hopefully give us further clarity around who's good, who's not good in the Big Ten.
I want to talk about Purdue-Syracuse real quick, if you would indulge me.
I was going to go to the ACC next, so this is a nice segue.
Yeah. Well, Purdue's a Big Ten team, so I figured we could use it as a nice bridge.
A nice bridge. Do it.
Fun, weird game. Fun, weird game. Obviously, Syracuse could not stop Charlie Jones from Aiden O'Connell.
Chuck Sizzle on this
Youthful teammates right here in the North Shore of Chicago. Youthful teammates reunited once again. Charlie Jones just kept getting behind the Syracuse defense, and Syracuse couldn't really run the ball. Purdue did a very nice job up front and beat up Purdue on both sides of the ball. Nonetheless, Purdue was in a pretty good position to win this game, but Garrett Schrader made plays. This was sort of a collection of misplaced Lego pieces built together to somehow come out of the dome. Whatever, the JMA Wireless.
JMA Wireless, Dan. Commit it to memory.
The JMAW. That last second absolute dime of a game-winning pass from Garrett Schrader to, I think it was to Gadsden, Oronde Gadsden. I hope I'm getting that name correct. I apologize because he had a really good game, came up in a couple of big moments. Really nice win for Syracuse when the defense didn't fully come through, when they couldn't really get it going with Sean Tucker, all that consistently. Very impressive win. Win your clunkers, win.
Are we at the point with Garrett Schrader? Has he proven enough to us through 3 weeks of the season that we can just start calling him Garrett Shredder?
This was a good step forward for getting that rep. Yeah, who do they have coming up? When can we cement Garrett Schrader?
Garrett Schrader.
They have NC State at home in the JMAW.
They have NC State at home in the JMAW. I was looking at Syracuse and the path before it. It's interesting. Virginia next week. We could talk about Virginia as we get a little deeper into the ACC. Mm-hmm. We may be on the bandwagon that is being driven by our friend Bud Elliott that Virginia is trash.
Yeah, bet against the Who's. Yeah.
That's a Bud thing, and Bud's probably right about that. But Virginia and Wagner before a bye week. And then it starts to get into the meat of this thing for Syracuse. Then we start to find out what Syracuse is all about. To close out the season, here are the remaining 7 games. NC State at Clemson, home against Notre Dame in the JMAW, at Pitt, home against Florida State, at Wake, at BC to close out the year. So it's imperative for Dino Babers to try and rattle off 2 more wins here before they go to the bye week, and then at least try to steal 1 more, maybe against Boston College to close out the year. Hell, it could be against Notre Dame. It could be against Clemson. I don't look at this roster of teams here and say all of these are unwinnable. Given what we've seen out of Syracuse.
Steal 1 against Boston College? Steal 1? I think you can sort of waltz into the Boston College store and say, I'll have this. And they'll say, okay, Mr. J-Maw. That's all.
It's more of a library card situation.
Yes. Right now.
Than it is actually stealing. Yeah.
Correct. No, Syracuse, they're interesting. They're fun, and they're probably a pain in the ass to play.
42 points, by the way, combined in that frenetic fourth quarter between Syracuse and Purdue. Syracuse wins by a 32-29 score. The ACC, I think, as a whole, has very quickly become the most interesting conference in college football for me.
Really?
It may not have the most high level play week in and week out, but there are just so many competing storylines that make it fascinating for me. The Syracuse story, very quietly, is one of the best in college football. I don't
Okay.
care if they win 6 games, but the manner in which they've gone out early and gotten a couple nice wins, I think is really impressive and a good thing for Dino Babers because he needed it. We know he needed it. Elsewhere, the Florida State story is interesting. NC State, quietly, very interesting. Clemson and Pitt, and certainly Miami, a team we discussed earlier. Wake Forest nearly losing to Liberty this week, bringing back Sam Hartman a week ago. They are interesting. You've got Duke with a new coach. Like, there's just so much going on here in this conference that I'm fascinated by.
So, yes. So Jordan Travis is really good. Hurt. We can talk about that game. That was Friday night, Florida State, Louisville. Big Johnny Wilson coming through the Arizona State transfer. Actually, I think went to my high school. Went to Calabasas High.
Oh, yeah?
Big dude. Had some drop issues at ASU, but moved on and looks to be at least a significant answer for Florida State out wide. Matchup nightmare, Ty. Matchup nightmare. Big body. Johnny Wilson.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully, I don't know what the status of Jordan Travis's injury is at the moment, but he was on crutches or in a boot of some kind. Tate Rodemaker came in. I think he threw an interception right away, but then calmed down, made plays, especially to Johnny Wilson, ran the ball well. Louisville's just, they're always good enough to possibly win. Not always, but they're in a lot of cases, but whether it's turnovers, whether it's bonehead mistakes, whatever, Louisville at home with opportunities in this game. Malik Cunningham made a ton of plays. Opportunities galore for Louisville to just not shoot themselves in the foot, just sort of continue a pace. And credit Florida State. Things are coming together for the Noles, even without their starting quarterback. Guys emerging on defense, and Jared Verse goes down. Other guys step up in that front. They've got playmakers in the secondary. The offensive line, functional.
Which you will take if you're a Florida State fan.
Of course.
If you are a Florida State fan in July,
Yeah.
and somebody came to you and said, "Look, they're not going to have like Outland Trophy guys on the I think that's the award given
that's
to
true. That's the one
to linemen, right? But
Yeah, the
we're not going to
Remington.
have that caliber offensive lineman, but it's going to be functional. Will you take it?" They would sign up for that in a
Stamp.
heartbeat, given where
Approved.
this thing's been at for the last decade.
Yeah. No, since the glory days of 2013, 14 in there.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I watched this whole game, by the way, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
I watched this whole game because one of my big picks was Florida State minus 2.5. And despite the fact that they're in this game and they're playing with a backup and Jared Verse goes down and everything, like the playbook seems overly simplified and limited, a strange sense of calm comes over me because of exactly what you described.
Yeah.
Knowing that Louisville's got a few dumb mistakes in them. That's just, and I hate to say it because we both liked Scott Satterfield a lot when he got hired. I think we both think the world of Malik Cunningham. He's out there doing everything he possibly can to try and win this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the Noles were not immune to their own share of boneheaded, like missed kicks and dumb plays and things of that nature. But 11 penalties, 3 turnovers from Louisville, big interception on that final drive. Like, it's just kind of their identity at this point, which sucks if you're a Cardinals fan, but it's truly who this team has become, either under Scott Satterfield or Malik Cunningham, or maybe some combination of both.
Everybody remaining on Florida State's schedule, and I know you're Mr. 10-2 Florida State.
10-2.
Everybody on Florida State's schedule, even if they're a better team, has definitive flaws.
Yep.
And so it's a Jordan Travis health thing. It's a continued offensive line and defense thing. Of course, these are obvious things. Florida State started last year 0-4. They started this year 3-0. Great first step. I'm giving a big, hearty, enthusiastic thumbs up to the camera for everybody watching this on verballers.com. Verballers.com. Get early access to shows and stuff.
Yep.
That's all.
All right. Elsewhere in the ACC, NC State knocked off Texas Tech 27-14. I do want to talk about this game here. Let me circle back to it in a second. Pitt 34, Western Michigan 13. Pitt starting something called Nate Yarnell.
Something.
He was their 4th string quarterback per Pat Narduzzi at the start of last week, but given injuries to Keaton Slovis, Nick Patty,
Efficient. Got the job done.
Yeah,
Found
they
Jared
didn't
Wayne.
ask him to do too much, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have to, but Pitt gets revenge on Western 34-13. Clemson wins 48-20 over Louisiana Tech. We had the Virginia game, the aforementioned Virginia game, where they need a rally in the final minute and then a 26-yard field goal to knock off ODU 16-14. Wake Forest needing a failed 2-point conversion. Hugh Freeze, that riverboat gambler for Liberty, decides, I'm not going for 1. I'm going for 2 in the W, which I always love. I always love it. I like the move. They couldn't get the job done here. Wake Forest survives 37-36. Duke won big. Boston College won big. Virginia Tech won the 11 a.m. game, which we joked on the Spotify show that maybe the ultimate Frisbee team needed the field a little bit later in the day, hence the earlier start time.
Maybe there was a banquet of some kind. Maybe somebody reserved Lane Stadium for an engagement photo shoot. Something.
Somebody just beat them to the sign-up sheet.
Yeah.
27-7, Virginia Tech knocks off Wofford. Interestingly, Wofford's first points of the year.
Okay.
They hadn't scored going into this game, so 27-7. What jumps out to you here, looking at these games that I just rattled through quickly?
From the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Yeah.
NC State, once again, proving themselves to be you have to note the offensive points scored, because this is, man, another team who, like, that was a very winnable game that the Wolfpack just lost. So yeah, they're much better than Texas Tech. Their defense essentially had their way, with Tech, especially coming off that emotional win for the Red Raiders last week.
They just sort of sat on Texas.
They jumped out to a lead.
Yeah.
And sat on them.
Sat on them. They shut down the running game. They forced Donovan Smith to throw it 36 times, which I think is a good formula, and 27-14. So it wasn't like the type of game that's going to blow you away. It was far more defensive-minded than I expected, but we both were high on NC State in this game. This was one of our double-barrel locks that hit.
Yeah, if I'm a visiting recruit, especially if I'm a quarterback or receiver visiting Carter Finley, and they say, this is how to use you. Watch the NC State offense. I might, in the back of my head, say, I don't know. There's just like, it's a lot of short stuff. The receivers are good, and you could see either one of these guys that are popping for NC State popping elsewhere in a more significant way. It's just like, it's not that fun an offense to watch, given what the defense is able to do, and given that this should be an 8, 9, 10 win program most years.
They're on the pickleball court.
They're pickling up a little bit in Raleigh. Yeah.
They're on the pickleball court. With Baylor, with Notre Dame. We can talk about Notre Dame in a second.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's on that court.
NC State has their starting quarterback, though.
Also true.
Yeah.
Also true.
I don't really have anything to say about. Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned Ole Miss just destroyed Georgia Tech.
Well, I don't want to go to. Yeah, we'll go to the SEC next.
Okay.
And since that Georgia Tech game is sort of the bridge here to get over to the SEC, but I did want to mention very quickly the Clemson game, Clemson, Louisiana Tech. I feel like I have come to a conclusion now on Clemson, because you may recall a couple weeks ago we were talking about DJU and the early going, how it was unclear to me whether it was a DJU problem or a receiver problem.
Right.
Meaning, is DJU just missing guys, or just guys not getting open?
Is he hesitant? Overthrowing.
I think the receivers are not getting open. I think it is more of a receiver than DJU problem. DJU might be part of the problem, but I do think it is more of a receiver thing where they're just not getting separation. They just were not getting separation in this game. And I'm not going to say it's going to come back to bite them next week against Wake. I don't know if Wake's good enough in the secondary to kind of highlight that, but you could see issues against NC State or maybe Florida State or Miami, even Notre Dame.
Totally.
I don't know. Like, the receiver problem for 2 years running has been something at Clemson, and it's not just with guys not winning the 50-50 ball. It's with guys not getting separation. And so I think, I don't know, like, I could see a loss coming for Clemson in the near future. I don't know from whom, but if this remains a concern and we have no reason to think they'll fix it overnight, I could see a loss coming as a result of it. Like, the receivers, it breaks down in the passing game. They got to lean too heavily on Will Shipley.
Mm-hmm.
A better defense can snuff that out, and you win a knife fight, something like 17-14.
Totally. Yeah, and receiver was the ultimate reflection of Dabo Swinney's success, and the number of receivers and tight ends that they were able to successfully recruit, develop, and showcase to the world and help develop these quarterbacks. And Look, this is a Clemson problem. This is, they have the continuity on both sides of the ball in the coaching staff. They're finding guys, identifying guys, and turning them into stars. This is partially where the term winter wonders came from. Guys like Mike Williams, throughout the years, Amari Rodgers, all these guys who are not just popping during the regular season, but pop in January. Those are the guys that are hard to find for so many teams. And I think it's partially on DJU. I think it's partially on the offensive staff to not figure out more creative ways to get guys open, because it's easier to develop when you're able to catch passes open. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about any of this, that it's going to be a struggle, and it's all relative to expectations for Clemson. They're going to win a bunch of games. They have an incredible defense. They don't make a ton of mistakes on offense, but it is weird. How long has Dabo been in Clemson sprinting ahead of the team down the hill? That's also weird. But I don't know if it's getting a little bit too complacent. I don't know if it's just he's been there too long. I don't know if it's just like a couple weird classes of receivers, but it definitely feels off. It definitely just feels off.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think more to come on that front. Let's go over to the SEC. You mentioned the big win for Ole Miss, 42-0 over Georgia Tech. We had LSU, a nice win at home over Mississippi State, 31-16. Arkansas threatened a little bit by Missouri State in the return of Bobby Petrino, 38-27. Arkansas goes on a run the last 11 minutes, scoring 21 points to win this game. We had Florida potentially losing to USF in this game. An
incredible missed field goal at the end. Somehow able to get it off, but missed it at USF. USF, I'm insulting.
Incredibly close. 31-28. Florida survives over USF. We had big wins for Georgia and Alabama, also for Tennessee and Kentucky, and then wins, though not what I would call big wins, for Missouri over Abilene Christian and Vandy. Another win for Vandy going off.
The Swan Song, baby.
The Swan Song. We had 38-28 over NIU. What stood out to you?
A lot of those things. Arkansas is now officially Missouri State-ish, which is, I don't know who that's more insulting to. But Bobby Petrino, and there were a lot of turnovers, a lot of ugly play. The secondary was pretty bad for Arkansas, but they won their clunker, which is important to do. Ole Miss, still kind of a weird passing attack, strange to say for a Lane Kiffin team, but ran the hell out of the ball.
316 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground for Ole Miss.
Yeah, Zach Evans, very good, as expected. And so if you are a little up and down on offense, but that includes running in a dominant fashion and winning the game, correct me if I'm wrong, 42-0,
mm-hmm.
You take that. You absolutely
by the
take
way,
that.
This was the first road shutout for Ole Miss since 2012, and the first time they've shut out a Power 5 team since 2008. So just something else Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech fans can hang up on the wall.
Yeah. Elsewhere in the SEC, South Carolina is probably not that good, and Georgia definitely is. I don't know. Brock Bowers was great. Stetson Bennett's great. There's so many people that I see talking about college football that are otherwise bright that say, Stetson Bennett's not one of the best 15 quarterbacks in the country. What? He's not one of the best 8 quarterbacks. He's not one of the best 7 quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett's really good. Sorry. Stetson Bennett, this is falling under my... I don't know. He's better than Danny Etling was for LSU. That was my Etling line. Guys, Danny Etling was pretty good. Stetson Bennett is full on good, and I refuse to acknowledge the existence of anybody who says otherwise. But Georgia as a whole is excellent.
Anthony Richardson was not good.
Anthony Richardson was not good. Let's unpack Anthony Richardson a little bit.
I'm going to take my Anthony Richardson hype from the preseason, and I'm just going to pull a good old-fashioned Irish goodbye. Just going to sneak it out the side door. And hope nobody realizes that I left.
Yeah.
Florida was up most of this game. USF came back. They grabbed 28-24 lead with 11 minutes left. And then Trevor Etienne ran it in for Florida with 5 minutes left to give them a lead. USF had a 49-yard field goal attempt with 23 seconds left that would have tied it. The holder dropped the snap.
Mm-hmm.
And so Florida survives. Anthony Richardson was not good. 2 interceptions, just 112 yards passing, didn't do anything on the ground. The defense couldn't stop the run, gave up a lot of rushing yards. Florida has yet to score. I found this one. Florida has yet to score a point in the third quarter this season, for whatever that's worth, whatever you make of that. So despite the fact that Florida got out of the gate really hot, nice win, still a really nice win at home over Utah. They've come down to earth a little bit. And they've got Tennessee,
Certainly.
I believe, next week, which I feel a lot better about that matchup.
Where is it? Gainesville or Knoxville?
I believe that game is in Knoxville.
Okay.
So I'll double check on that just to make sure I'm not misspeaking here. But definitely off the Florida bandwagon a little bit. It pains me to say it because I was all in. But Anthony Richardson needs a little bit more fine-tuning before we can get there.
Okay, fair enough. Quickly on Vandy, by the way, comeback win. Rocky Lombardi goes down for NIU, like an hour and a half away from me. I could have gone to this game.
You could have gone to it. You could have played.
I think it was Will Shepard who had a really good game for the Doors, and Vandy now 3-1. I don't know how many more they're going to win, but I think their over-under going into the season was 3 wins, 2.5 wins, 3 wins, something like that. And that's a strong start for year 2 of Clark Lee and the Doors. Also, we should talk about Mississippi State LSU.
Yep, I wanted to bring it up. I'm finally at the point going against Mike Leach in every big game.
Okay.
I'm here. Couldn't get it done in this one on a bunch of 4th and short scenarios. They have problems on special teams, drop passes, et cetera, et cetera. This is not why LSU won. Okay, it's not why LSU won, but they won because they were better, by the way, for whatever it's worth. But I feel like we talk ourselves into a corner every year with this Mississippi State team. You do it to me because you're the one who's higher on them.
Yeah.
And I talked myself into believing that Mississippi State was the better team, the more veteran team. Doesn't matter. They're on the road. They're in Death Valley. People hate Brian
picked
Kelly
LSU
already.
in this game. To be clear, I picked LSU because I said
know, but
defense
still-
and home environment at night. Continue.
But just by proximity to your weird Mississippi State love, you talked me into the Bulldogs here. And I don't know. LSU sort of beat them up. Their defensive front. They dictated the trenches with a better defensive front. They owned that point of attack, really on both sides of the ball, generated a ton of havoc plays, and they also didn't quit, which I don't know how you quantify that. I'm not going to say they're plucky or frisky or anything like that, but this is kind of what I've alluded to in the past when I talked about some of the early Brian Kelly Notre Dame teams, where, granted, this team probably has a lot more talent than any of those Notre Dame teams did, But those Notre Dame teams in the very early going under BK did not quit, and they were in every freaking game. And you saw it in this one. You saw it in this one. LSU was down 13-0 with 2 minutes left in the half. They went on a 31-3 run the rest of the way and just took it. And, Jaden Daniels needs some work, and I'm sure we could find 100 things on LSU's side that need some maturation before now and the end of the season. But I thought this was a really nice win for him at home, the way they came back.
Yeah, John Emery playing for the first time in a while at running back, the much heralded ballyhooed running back recruit. Thank you very much. No, there wasn't much in the way of offense in either direction in terms of putting the ball into the end zone. But it's a 4-quarter game, and LSU came to play. I don't love Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's all that consistent, but he makes plays in big moments, and we had the 4th and 3 when they were up 1 with like the slot fade. No, the story here was LSU's defense and how they can win games behind Jaden Daniels making not a ton of mistakes, getting some big plays here and there on offense, and having BJ Ojolari and Harold Perkins and Jay Ward wear your uniform and not the other team's uniform. And that's a big deal with what they lost on defense and how they had to hit the portal. Obviously, Harold Perkins, a 5-star recruit. But yeah, BJ Ojolari is disruptive. They harassed Will Rogers. They forced him to think a little bit extra. They forced him into mistakes. Obviously, the game-sealing pick. But 4-quarter game. And LSU was better prepared to play 4 quarters, especially with, I think it's Matt House, the defensive coordinator,
Yes.
who used to be at Kentucky all those years ago. And I thought LSU was just, they were more locked in and ready to win this game, which they're going to take year 1 lumps. Win your year 1 lumps. Why not?
All right. And let's close it out, at least on the Power 5 level, with your Pac-12.
Yeah, what else we got?
Talked about Oregon, talked about Washington, but USC wins 45-17. Utah also wins 35-7 over San Diego State. UCLA survives South Alabama. We'll talk about that game here momentarily. Wazoo wins 38-7. Notre Dame knocks off Cal 24-17. Arizona, the transitive FCS national champion by virtue of their 31-28 win over North Dakota State. Eastern Michigan knocks off ASU, and Oregon State by 40 over Montana State, Dan.
Yeah.
The UCLA game.
The worst fake field goal in America. Yeah.
Holy crap. What was that? UCLA is losing with 3 minutes left, 31-29. 4th and 2 from the 22-yard line for South Alabama. One would think, kick the field goal, extend the lead to 5, then you can't lose on a field goal, right?
Yeah.
South Alabama decides, F it, let's fake it. A really bad fake,
and just a questionable time. I'm not anti-fake. I'm not anti-swings. But the timing of it was suspect, given that they could put the game away in a very specific, easier way.
Talk about conducting the Overthink Express.
Yeah.
UCLA obviously stops it, obviously drives the field, obviously kicks their own field goal to win it, 32-31. Bit of a heartbreaker. The Sun Belt almost got another one, almost picked another one off of that Power 5 tree. USC basically, no one has any answer for USC's offense. We have not seen anyone with an answer for that offense. They are too good. They're on the road next week against Oregon State, which could be interesting shootout potential. But still, I don't know how many teams on USC's schedule are going to be able to contain that offense and how good they look. Of note here on the Fresno side, this one started getting more away from Fresno. USC had a lead, but it got more away from Fresno after Jay Kaner went down. Jay Kaner had to be carted off with what they're saying was a bad ankle sprain. It didn't look great. He was in a lot of pain, but he's obviously their best player. To lose him did not help.
Backup came in with sharp, though. Fife, don't know if he's related
Logan
to former
Fife.
Oregon. Logan Fife. Don't know if he's related to Jason Fife.
Yep.
It would seem weird if he were his kid already. That would very much age me. Fresno's a pretty good team. Jake Haener going down affects things. The story here is USC, and I don't love the USC defense, but they keep forcing turnovers and winning by big margins, and so any nitpicking is kind of foolish at this point. Jordan Addison, we already know. Jordan Addison is a big-time dude. Mario Williams, big-time dude. Caleb Williams is a problem. He can make plays with his feet, make plays with his arms. Curious about just what this USC team looks like when they're pushed by more and more significant teams. I don't know who those teams are.
That's my
we have
point.
Utah and Oregon and Washington at some point, maybe, if they end up in the Pac-12 championship game against one another, but they definitely have Utah. But their schedule is such where you're just like, they can win a bunch of these games with how they're doing it now. Look, if you're going to nitpick, you're going to say, like, okay, who is it beyond those receivers? Travis Dye had a pretty good game. The running game had a good game. I don't love the outside of their offensive line, but nobody's really fully taking advantage yet. I don't love their front seven. Nobody's really fully taking advantage and turning longer runs. By the way, Rice won yesterday. So Rice quality. Who's turning those longer runs into actual points? Because you can push USC around up front. A couple interesting pieces like Solomon Byrd, I guess. But you can push them around. You can move the ball against USC. But nobody's finishing those drives. And that's important. USC, full-on good team. Seemingly noticeable flaws. But if it's not costing them losses or costing them barely escaping from inferior teams, I don't know. The complaints are sort of just floating into ether at this point.
It reminds me a lot of Oklahoma from last year.
Oklahoma was sneaking by Tulane. Oklahoma was sneaking by Nebraska. Oklahoma was those close, weird against lesser. This is not close and weird for USC so far.
But Oklahoma at its best under Lincoln Riley was this. There were noticeable flaws, mainly on defense.
Sure.
They constantly tried to correct them, but the offense was always virtually unstoppable when those teams were at their best.
Yeah. I think all, and this is year one though. And some of the complaints that people had about Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma were coming in year 4 or 5 when it was fully his roster. Now it's different calculus with the transfer portal for sure, but this is a different conference too. That is of lesser quality in this division. Let's say
that is very true.
Yeah.
Notre Dame won 24-17. Cal almost caught a Hail Mary to tie it.
Yeah, they did. And Notre Dame almost won by 2 touchdowns to cover this impossible spread, seemingly.
That's right. So, I mean, look, I won't spend too much time talking about this, but there were a couple bright spots in this game for Notre Dame. None of them were in the first half. Forget about the first half. Throw it out altogether.
Yeah.
In the second half, they definitely got things going in a much better direction. Drew Pine settled into more of the game plan in the second half. The line was a little bit better.
Do your effing job. Do your effing job. Do your effing job. Tommy Reese is begging you.
Tommy Reese was a little bit agitated with Drew Pine, to say the very least.
Well, okay. Let's paint the picture. You can go on with the top level analysis, but Drew Pine missed a 5-foot pass on the flat. Okay, maybe 7 feet, 8 feet. But like one of those play action passes where a guy's squirting out into the flat, like at the line of scrimmage with nobody within 8 yards of him, that Drew Pine threw behind him in low.
Yeah.
So
Drew Pine behind him in low was a bit of a recurring theme.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a recurring theme. We're not going to confuse him with any kind of pinpoint passer,
right?
With respect to accuracy. There's a lot to be desired in that realm of things for Drew Pine. I'm still not sure how this is going to go. What I did like was the fact that it seems like they got it on the game plan side of things anyway, in that they gave Chris Tyree a lot more of the football. People have been screaming for more Chris Tyree. They finally gave Chris Tyree the ball. Audric Estime, they were able to use him as kind of like a counterbalance to Chris Tyree, who's more of the versatile back who you can bring out of the backfield, catch passes, better in space. Audric Estime, much more of a north-south guy. So the Thunder Lightning combination worked pretty well for him. Second half, they start wearing Cal down. And, I thought a better showing than we've seen so far this year for Notre Dame, particularly in the second half of this game. What that portends for future matchups now, as you look at Notre Dame's schedule, I have no idea. They're still very much learning as they go here. There's still far too many mistakes, especially along that offensive line. But at least within the bubble of this Cal game, the second half was definitely a bright spot.
Yeah, well, when you open up a game with 7 straight 3-and-outs, Cal and Notre Dame doing so, I would hope the second half would be a bright spot competitively. Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. Every one of your points is correct. On the other side, how long has Justin Wilcox been in Cal and not being able to figure out an offensive line and quarterback, offensive coordinator? We're now at year 6? 17, yep. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We're in year 6. I count on my fingers. And just kind of a bummer because the defenses consistently get pretty developed and just not happening for the Bears, which is a bummer because, again, pretty nice day for the Pac-12 somewhat.
The only other game here that I have, and I'm sure you have more in addition to some dudes that we'd like to call out, but we do need to give another shout out to App frickin' State, man.
Holy hell, yeah.
32-28. They're on the heels of a wild 2 weeks, man. I mean, first off, a wild 3 weeks, really. Mm-hmm. They could have beaten North Carolina week 1. They lost a 63-61 shootout. Next week, they're on the road, go to Texas A&M and win.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're coming home. College Game Day meets them there, as do the Troy Trojans. And it's a game they would have lost if not for a 53-yard Hail Mary that they did catch.
And it wasn't even just a catch, Ty. It was like a weird planned reaction catch. We were like, let them tip it and sneak out in front of them and then run it around them. It was
like a hook and ladder type thing.
Yes.
Where, they end up catching it. They run it in from a couple yards out, 32-28. Shout out to our good friend Adam Witten.
Yeah.
Play-by-play guy for App State who's been going viral for all the right reasons. May the townspeople deliver to you the finest throat coat tea in all the land, because I'm sure the pipes are a little bit sore again after just a harrowing victory, man. Just at the top of your lungs screaming in Boone type of victory. Kudos to the Mountaineers.
Yeah, elsewhere, by the way, in the Sun Belt, just Coastal, nice, impressive day, came on strong late against Buffalo, who's now at 0-3. You mentioned Virginia ODU and UCLA South Alabama, but not enough is being made of this UCLA South Alabama. Forget the fake field goal. UCLA celebrated this win in the locker room going crazy, which I'm not going to fully criticize them for because we didn't lose I'm always happy to not lose sometimes. But there is something about the Chip Kelly era at UCLA where he's always just ordering the thing nobody orders on the menu in terms of the wins and losses that you like, oh, we're going to beat LSU and maybe lose to South Alabama. Like, I'll have the spanakopita. He ordered this. What? We do have spanakopita? Chip Kelly ordering the spanakopita of wins and losses. Yeah, an incredible season for App State. UAB catches Georgia Southern on the downturn after they beat Nebraska. They ran all over the Eagles of Georgia Southern. Bowling Green catching Marshall in a letdown spot after Marshall's win over Notre Dame. Memphis, I mean, you should beat Arkansas State at this point, but Memphis has had a weird couple of years. Charlotte gets in the win column with a win over Georgia State, who I liked coming into the season. But most importantly, as I mentioned before, Rice beat Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
You do just go to Houston and beat Rice, just not this weekend, as Rice really takes it. Mike Bloomgren, nice job for the Owls. Mountain West wise, the things of note. I mean, Wyoming beat Air Force, which I did not see coming after they lost the way that they did to Illinois, but they quietly beat Tulsa. Really nice win to keep Air Force's offense down. San Diego State, it was kind of boring early going, but Utah took it to them. UNLV 2-1. UNLV winning record. How about that? That's not nothing. New Mexico over UTEP. New Mexico, slowly but surely. Danny Gonzalez, believe. And Hawaii gets in the win column as well over Duquesne. Patriot League, yes. Lafayette got destroyed by Bill and Mary. Lehigh did get destroyed by somebody. I think Richmond maybe?
Yes, the Spiders.
That's not great. Otherwise, I mean, Indiana snuck by Western Kentucky. I think you mentioned that in the Big Ten portion of things. 3-0, Indiana. Okay, that's something. UCF, John Rice Plumlee, by the way, went bananas over, I think it was FAU, right? Yeah, UCF on the road in Boca over FAU. Otherwise, I think that sort of covers it. Was there anything else you want to talk dudes?
I think we should talk dudes
real quick.
Who do we got here for week 3?
We're living single with Nick Singleton, running back for Penn State. I imagine we're going to be calling his name more. Johnny Wilson, Florida State. Michael Penix Jr., Mr. Laser himself, quarterback, Washington. Bijan Robinson, of course, of Texas. Brock Bowers. How about Nate Yarnell? How about that?
My
Revenge
guy.
spot. Hail to Pitt. Going on the road to Kalamazoo, the zoo. Jalen Daniels, Kansas. I mean, we're not gushing right now, and we haven't gushed yet. I mean, you mentioned it, but Kansas 3-0, fall down 14-0.
I am fired up for Jalen Daniels. 5 touchdowns. Look good. It wasn't just like they eked it out either.
No,
Houston had no answer for the Jayhawks offense like the last three and a half quarters.
They hit the Jalen Daniels wall after their eventful last couple weeks. Who else do I have on this list? That everybody, Verballers submitted. You submitted. Oronde Gadsden, Syracuse, coming up big. Charlie Jones in that same game. And Rashee Rice. A really impressive day for receivers across the board. Now, we didn't do this last week, and we should have, Ty. Real quick. None of these people have been fired. Let's react just in case they are. Herm Edwards, you just lost to Eastern Michigan. Man, sorry it didn't work out. The first Pac-12 team to ever lose to a MAC team during the regular season. The vote of confidence was avoided by those in power at Arizona State. So
Brian Harston,
rough.
Yeah, just rough week 3. Really rough tenure.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to be at a place where they don't want you. Pretty openly. Who else? Can we bump
Jeff
in here?
Collins, you just got shut out by Ole Miss at home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see him as a long-term threat to recruiting and donations in the way that Herm Edwards and Brian Harston maybe and Scott Frost was. Any other names that you
Kirk
just want to...
Ferentz, what the hell? Just throw it out there.
No, he's our Twinkie. He's surviving the First of all, apocalypse is not a word. Apocalypse. Also, calling Kirk Ferentz a Twinkie may have some implications that I'm not fully aware of.
Why don't we end the show? Let's end this show before it goes any more off the rails. Thank you to one and all for downloading, for listening, for playing along at home.
Yes.
We especially want to thank our premium Verballers who have been watching patiently as we try to record this madness here bright and early on a Sunday morning before I had my full allotment of caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
And also there is a secret portion of this audio that is only available to them because I forgot to hit record, at least in the first go round. So shout out to Mr. Pizzacoli, Sean, Andy, Beat U of A. Who else? Kimberly, David. Who else we got here? Shay. Hopefully I'm not cycling through the same.
Herm E. Watching along. Yeah.
C-Ken P in Alpha.
Of course, Alpha. Alpha. There it is.
Eggs Over Easy. All sorts of folks chiming in, weighing in here, joining us live. Reballers.com is where you can go for more information on how you can watch live. Also, how you can get in on the Discord, which again was popping off during all the games yesterday, and vote in the Verballer Top 10 poll. Every time we put out the Verballer Top 10 poll, we have people ask, how can I vote in that? I want to vote in that. Verballers.com is where you go find out more about that. And last but certainly not least, we would encourage you again, solidverbalive.com for college football, the game show, presented by the Solid Verbal, an interactive experience on Friday night, October the 7th in New York City at Chelsea Music Hall.
Yeah. I would like to establish this right at the onset. We have 5 colons. We somehow are going to work 5 colons. That's all.
For that guy over there, my good friend, Dan Rubenstein.
Multicolon. Yeah.
For myself, Ty Hildebrand, thanks again for downloading, listening, and again, supporting our madness. We will talk to you all soon. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.